Barbara kindly shifted her presentation to the previous slot. So you'll be the only one in this slot. Samuel Mendonça, an old IMPI favorite, has joined us from Brazil, and he'll be presenting on a very topical theme: teaching as dissensus in times of COVID-19. Forward to your presentation, Samuel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kai. It's very nice to see all the colleagues, which I did not met after the Ethiopia event. I was not able to get together in Italy and others because of other conferences in Brazil anyway. And I will share my presentation here. Try to, let's see if it works. I think it will work. I think it's working. Let me know if I think you see. Oh, sure. So I start here talking concerning some topics. First, let me see. Okay, I'd like to thank the board to organize a conference, even from remote access. I know exactly what it means because here in Brazil, we postpone our Brazilian Philosophy Education Society conference, which will be done at São Paulo State University. All of you are invited to join us in our conference in 2022. I met some of you in the INPI conferences in Bogota, Colombia, and I'm happy to see here our colleague from Bogota, Andres Mejia, and also in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And I'm happy now because Renato Wati is a colleague, is working on a Latin American Philosophy Education Society. He's our president, and we are working together with many things. And I'm happy to know Renato is organizing this conference with INPI at Yunnan. Of course, we are here in remote control. It's an honor for me to present my paper called Teaching as Dissensus in Times of Coronavirus. I'm following some of a written from Gerd Bista as a rediscovery of a teaching, which was published in 2017, and some papers from 2020. For example, as a risking ourselves in education, qualification, socialization, and subjectivation, revisited, published in Educational Theory, and can the prevailing description of educational reality be considered complete, published in Policy Futures in Education. Using his ideas, I'm connecting them into the context of the coronavirus. He did not do it, and all limits here are my responsibility. The idea of teaching as dissensus has to do with a broad view of what education is for. That is, the idea that education needs to work in a relation to qualification, socialization, and subjectivation. After the rediscovery of a teaching, Bista keeps developing his studies besides his code, critic of the rise of the new language of learning, and the more general learnification of education had to do with the fact that the term learning is a rather empty process term that does not say much, if anything at all, but about what the learning is supposed to be about and for. Yet these questions are crucial for education because the point of education is never that students simply learn. They can do that anywhere, including nowadays, for example, on the internet, but that they learn something, that they learn it for a reason, and that they learn it from someone. When we consider the 2020 pandemic, let me just change here. This is the first. I put in my question just to know what I'm going to work. I have to go and come back. When we consider the 2020 pandemic, what kind of teaching the schools will demand? What kind of teacher will we need to work with education? I think it's necessary to plan a new teaching, a new learning, a new education. That's the reason I suggest thinking with vista related to qualification, socialization, and subjectivation, considering the dissensus concept. Most policy documents and the whole measurement industry is mainly interested in a narrow view of qualification and also some socialization, but in the restrict sense of protection very specific identities, such as that of the good citizen, for example, which in practice often means the obedient citizen. My research is bigger than what I select to present here. I select with my PhD and master students in a subject which I taught last semester, a lot of data concerning international institutions related to education. I will not present it here, of course. In this presentation, I will briefly analyze the concept of teaching as dissensus as proposed by Gert Bista, that is, turning to student subjectivity, teaching that we seek to somehow awaken their desire to exist in the world as an object. And here I have my question. Our main question is, how important is socialization as tool of dissensus for the post-pandemic? Change again. Yeah, over here. I have some numbers to, oh, sorry. Yeah, over here. Back. The coronavirus pandemic began in the city of Yunnan, China, in December 31, 2019, and rapidly spread throughout the world, initially in the Asian continent and the sequence in all other continents. That said, in March 2020, the World Health Organization has defined the disease as pandemic, which accounts for over 13 million infected people in the past 4 months, according to the Google News at that time. Hence, the resources directed by different nations to research laboratories and the nations to find a cure reveal the worldwide concern with the pandemics. However, each country has had their own challenges in this implementation, such as the creation of online platforms, distribution of technological resources, schooling, replanning, among others. On the other hand, according to the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the UNESCO, report of April 21, 2020, half of all students held away from the classroom by the COVID pandemic. Around 826 million students have no access to a home computer, and around 43%, is 706 million, have no internet at home. Therefore, the guarantee of educational continuity through digital distance learning is not so efficient. In this context, many countries have established a lockdown, that is an isolation that hinders the transit of people, cargo, and objects. And right now I know the second wave in the Europe in general, and so sorry for my colleagues. Thus, many companies have opted for home office, and consequently the school institution also had to adapt to this new remote model. What about teaching specifically? Now I change. We have to think concerning our challenges. How have teachers faced the task of teaching at distance, having in mind that many institutions are not able to maintain their activities due to the lack of material conditions and every teacher training? Would it not be the case to insert the concept of dissensus to think upon a new conception of teaching? I would like to present a potential tool the idea of Dissensus to re-signify the post-pandemic teaching. But besides that, then I have a very specific part what I have here. Besides that, teaching should ultimately focus also on subjectivation. We need to have a different understanding of teaching, not as an effective intervention to produce and result outcome, but as this exchange, counterfactual activity. This is come from a conversation with Vista, which I have very soon. Subjectivation thus has to do with the question of freedom. Vista explains that this is not the freedom to do what one wants to do, but the freedom to act in and with the world in a grow-up way. It's possible to see dissensus not only as the absence of consensus or as a moment of disagreement or conflict. Talking to Vista, he explained me that, he then quote, the dimension that is hardly ever touched upon is that the subjectivation. But it's there that I think education has something really important to do around the desire in the new generation to exist as subject in their own lives, which is also the question of education as emancipation. The question then is, how can we understand teaching in relation to subjectivation, unquote. Vista highlights that the priority of education in many countries is to survive in a global economy, inserted in a society of a rapid change and uncertain future. In this context, the so-called foundations of education are produced, which are defined in terms of knowledge and skill needed for the economy to function, considering a job market that aims at competition between pairs and is to agility of adaptation. Thus, educational systems worldwide are increasingly look alike. However, situations like the one we are facing bring to light the urges of broader reference for education, in which contents related to education are include democracy, ecology, and care. In this path, Vista points out that such inquiries are linked to existential issues that are faced when trying to discover how to may be able to live together in the plurality of human forms in a vulnerable and already significantly depleted planet. He wrote this before the COVID-19. The author reinforces the importance of the economy, but stresses that the challenges is to do it sustainable, careful, and in a democratic way, through an education in which the focus is the child's full potential development. Vista, in the chapter 5 of his book, The Rediscovery of Teaching, analyzes teaching more from the standpoint of what we could call the act of teaching, than in terms of the general work of a teacher, comparing the concepts of teaching as promoting what intimately connects them with a unidimensional temporal logic, that is, related to teaching notions that solely promote development or growth. Hence, inspired by Rancière, the French philosopher, Vista proposed another quality of teaching as dissensus. Next. Here. Hence, according to Vista, the teaching of dissensus and not consensus is above all a rupture with the current state of things by refusing to resort the incapacity and incompetence. That is, still according to Rancière, the refusal to accept incompetence and inequality, and at the same time, the verification of the assumption of equality and intelligence. Goodness. Just final remarks only to finish here. If we start this presentation with the question, how important is socialization as tool of Dissensus for the post-pandemic? Through our reflections, we have confirmed the hypothesis according to which Dissensus, teaching as Dissensus, is the marking conception that may guide different nations in the post-pandemic, as it necessarily includes the singularity of each student and the absence of teacher control, or in other terms, turning to the student subjectivity by teaching that we seek to somehow awaken their desire to exist in the world as a subject. It's evident that this is not a simple task. Once, it will require from teachers to be open to listen as a necessary element of one who is effectively concerned with the students. It's important to prepare teachers, directors, with public policies that create a room for dialogue, and what it means to teach in a moment of other fragilities, as it's in the case of lack of a work, and even minimum surviving conditions such as food, for instance. This is precisely the socialization. It makes no sense to maintain teaching as it was. Because schools will radically change, or due to the sensitivity that everyone should have in regards to human needs, which certainly includes school, but not only. Returning to the idea of teaching of Dissensus presented by Vista, that is beyond the promotion of development or growth from a linear conception of school and timing and the expectation of student incapacity, but as an incommensurable element in the existing state of things and in the current context, further considering the total uncertainty provoked by the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, by revealing more and more the need for acknowledgement of teaching as production of heterogeneous, it's difficult for me this word, data in a political action, put in check all that is diverse and questioning the matter of multiple identities and rules established by consensual pseudo-democratic standards. It's a matter of disturbing the rigidity of teaching and reopening the field of contestation against impositions from educational policies defined by certain national and international groups and organizations, which are based on a selective and hierarchically privileged accounting in a favor of social groups supported by the consensus established by technocratic elites. Hence, teaching as Dissensus in a socialization takes place in educational when we factually accept the child or student as a unique and a singular subject and recognize them as capable and competent, and then seek to awaken their desire to exist in the world, even in such adverse times, with the act of teaching in a cyclical schooling time always possible to return to, and in the belief in a continuum of possibilities. In this sense, the post-pandemic teaching will face matter involving quality, the loss of time and populism. However, each country will deal with a different transformation in their educational teaching. Nevertheless, themes such as commoditization and devaluation of a teaching profession are aspects exalted by this new need to create a teaching method. May the Dissensus spirit be maintained as a place of acknowledgement of a singularity of all individuals involved in schools, improving the socialization. That's part of what I use in my for my text. Is bigger than what I have here. And thank you very much for listening.
Thanks very much, Samuel. It's quite a feat to present a paper at a conference on education, environment, sustainability. The topic of the paper being COVID-19, and not to mention Bolsonaro once. That's quite an achievement. I'm happy to take questions now. I think we've got I haven't heard from Nuran, so we've got a bit of a, we've got a bit of time to play with. I'm happy to take questions. Carl Anders.
How are you, Sam? There. Hi, thank you for your paper. I just wonder. I mean, the representation on Bista's work. I mean, I'm not saying anything about that really, but what I wonder about is this, and maybe I misheard that also, but it sounds like there is a very kind of passive role of the teacher in the way in which you have to wait for the awakening interest of the student in what you were saying. But that is not all. That is not at all, I think, if that is the case, that can be my mishearing, but that is not at all what Bista would claim, because it's the opposite, that the teacher have a very profound role, but it is kind of different, and that is particularly in the call of the I, as we talk, mentioned before, through also often referred to as Mullenhauer, but to call for someone to appear. So it's a call and response, and within that call is the kind of the if you want, the art of teaching, which is that call. So yeah, so there was just that. So I was wondering how you were thinking about that in relation to that, waiting for the kind of things to happen.
Great, thank you very much. Actually, this is only a part of a paper, as I said. It is not, of course, all the things which Bista are concerned. I agree with you in this concern, and also it's not the way of waiting for something that will happen later, but the calling and the engagement, then necessarily to do like that. And I could say that I agree with your point of view in this way. And I think I don't have some other things to add in this way. But what I would like to use this time to connect things that I did not do in my presentation is the relation which he established in between qualification and socialization. This part is so important because Bista will, in some of his writings, not only this book, but many of the papers, some of we have here, the educational theories from many of people are here. We have this connection in between. We are starting the schools and the policies. They're, in general, they are looking for the qualification, the quality of student, quality of teaching, quality of learning, quality. But they don't put the main question is what is education is for. And when he established this kind of connection with socialization, we get, in my opinion at least, a kind of foundation. It comes from John Dewey, actually. And of course, we have no time here for working on this way. But in my opinion, this is clearly on Dewey's writings, for example.
Barbara?
Thank you, Samuel, for this. And I am your colleague that was supposed to be presenting with you. So good to see you. I am wondering, amongst us, I'd like to bring COVID into this conversation. And I'm curious, amongst all of us here, how many of us are still teaching face-to-face?
Yeah, you're right.
I am. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3,
I am
4, 5.
partly.
5 of
I'm
us.
also partly teaching.
Okay. It has been so striking for me. Well, first of all, I was sort of shocked when I arrived the first day to discover there was parking places. And there are only 15% of face-to-face classes going on at University of Tennessee. And I sort of assumed everybody would sign up to teach face-to-face because I love to teach and I love to work with students. And my students are predominantly international students because in the middle of the summer, our president threatened that people were going to have to go home and stay home if they didn't have face-to-face classes. That lasted like 2 days before the universities all explained that that would kill us to not have international students. Students are really a reminder of how important that teaching student relationship subjectification side that Gert did such a good job of helping us see how important that is. My students are suffering. They're lonely. They're especially the international students. They left their family at home to be here, and they don't even get to talk to each other on Zoom unless the meeting starts and then it ends, and there's, we've been talking to each other between sessions, but it's a very interesting time to look at what he's talking about and look at the way that students are struggling with it. And you also added the whole layer of the need for resources to have internet access and have a computer access to even do that. And I have one student who has a child with special needs who really misses that space where with a teacher where that helps him function as an autistic child. So I'm just really struck. I think these are really important ideas, and that COVID is really reminding us how important they are. So are you running into this too, others?
Very nice, very good to listen your concern, Barbara, because also in Brazil, all the classes are now allowed right now by face-to-face, because the COVID here is, of course, is the worst in if you compare it with other countries, the worse than the United States, because in Brazil we have our president. He is member of COVID. He's part of the virus. It's like he is working with the virus. Then this is terrible for all of us in general, for schools, for teachers. We have many schools here without possibility of have classes. Of course, face-to-face is not the time for that, but even using computer, because many schools has no computer. Families, they have no food. I don't know if you have this information, but 70% of Brazilian people, they used to survive with around $100 US a month. 770 of our population. Then we have very big problems coming from the next years. Nowadays, people are a little bit in peace, a little bit, they are under control. I don't know until what time this will be. That's the problem we have here. And concerning the education, I totally agree with you. The face-to-face, and also my students, we can see how they are suffering having this kind of distance. But more than this, what I think is important to say is we have the opportunity of learning a lot of things. For example, opportunity for learning concerning the trustee. We must trust our students. And when we have face-to-face school, at least in Brazil in general, many teachers, they are, they want to control. It's a kind of a traditional kind of education we have in the hands of the teacher. And what we are getting now is the opportunity to give a part of this confidence for students in the real situation. I think is one of the things we can learn from the coronavirus. And anyway, this is some comments only. Thank you very much, Barbara.
I just want to read a message from the chat written by Refika Arabaji, who asked me to ask it on behalf of her. Thank you, Samuel. Amazing insights there. I have a question. In Biesta's The Beautiful Risk of Education, Emancipation highlighted as acknowledging the equality between teacher and student relationships. So freedom is not given. To what extent is it possible? Could you elaborate on this more in terms of socialization, please? That is, students' position in society as children. So is it really possible to, she says, recognize or recognize children as equal participants in society?
Thank you very much, Refika. I think your question is very, very important, because when we talk concerning freedom in the classroom, in the schools with children, or even with adults, it's not a simple one. It's not only to say, do what you want to do, or you can go out if you don't want to stay here. It's not this we are talking about. We are talking actually concerning the freedom which is related to responsibility. And this is easy to do? Of course not, but it is possible to do. When we have, for example, policies which we consider the number of students in the classroom, for example, because if the teacher has too many students, as in Brazil in general, in the basic education, we have some classes with 60, 50 students, then this is not possible to work on liberty in this way. In each way, you must have a very hard discipline to work on. That's the reason it's difficult. Then the first thing I think is to think concerning politics. And the second is to work on the teacher training in related to work on emancipation of teachers first. When you're talking about emancipation, we have, of course, in philosophy, a lot of discussion concerning Plato, concerning Rancière. We have some differences, of course, but I'm thinking in over here in emancipation in the sense of each of human being could decide concerning their fragilities and also what they have as a power. How do you prepare politics to work on this? I think using philosophy in the classroom for children, you can start with that. You can start using philosophy also in the professional, in the when we work on teachers, and also with directors. I think this is one way possible that we can do it, but this also will require a lot of effort for each person. It's not the thing which the state will decide, will create a politic. I really believe we need also a part of getting the responsibility to decide and to take the path to work on. And it's not easy to think in concerning the equal participants in the society, but I think is the goal we cannot give up. It's necessary to keep this kind of, in general, it depends. We have people here from different countries, but it's easier for me to think concerning Brazil. And Brazil, you have no idea what we have here as the effort from the government to the teachers or to the schools. And in our situation, I could answer, it's not possible to think concerning equal participants. We won't have it. But this is my goal. I will keep that. I won't give up, and I want to do with our colleagues, with Impe here, my colleagues, everyone could give our some ideas, and we must, overcome it all the time. Our situation is not easy, but it's not easy in many countries, not only in Brazil. In South America, in Latin America in general, the problems concerning the same. Also in Asian, we know in some countries in Europe too, and this is our problem. That's the reason we are here, and I'm happy to do it.
Thanks, Samuel. There's also very, very interesting and very generative comment by Jeff in the chat box. So you might want to check that out. Jeff might want to come back to us on that. In the meantime, Asger, you have a question?
Well, yes, thank you. Thank you, Samuel. Hi, Samuel. I just wanted to maybe take the benefit of our time to maybe be a more general following up on what Samuel just said, because this puts the spot on some things in our academic field, which maybe should make us more keen on being precise in wording and conceptualization, because this about equality between teacher and whoever is the subject, of course, makes a big difference whether it's in school, kindergarten, university. So I mean, it's we somehow I don't hear very often the term pupil, and maybe we should, when we talk about these things, I mean, at least, I mean, I'm not a native English speaker either. So when I hear the word student, at least from a Danish speaking English, that means, well, some kind of almost grown up person who is on after secondary school. So, and there I think it makes a lot of sense of talking about equality, and when the basic needs are fulfilled, I mean, in a relatively well-off, a very well-off country like Denmark, then the experience can be that this responsibility in this very difficult situation is taken on both sides of the relation. I mean, my experience with the lockdown in early summer and spring in Denmark was that the students, and this was university students, they were really taking a responsibility for themselves and for the university, and they delivered to a much larger degree than they normally do, both in terms of participation in Zoom seminars and later on in the essays they're supposed to submit by the end of the term. And so in that sense, there was an equality. We're all in it together. We're all locked down. But that's, of course, because we have this welfare. I mean, we all have internet connections. We all have the food that we need. So when all these things are set, we can talk about equality in a relation between grown-ups, some older, like me, some younger, like students, but still it's a relationship between grown-ups. Whereas we should allow ourselves also to be specific, talk about schools, pupils, and there I would say it's of course this responsibility for one's own learning is not in the same way relevant, and the reason why I also think we should be specific, apart from being more precise in our own wording, is also because there is at least my experience from philosophy of education discussions is that they're very much centered on primary schooling. And this and of course most people attend general school or primary school, so that's understandable. But when we talk as if all education was primary schooling, then on the one hand we leave out kindergarten, and on the other hand we leave out secondary and university schooling. And then what happens for us as a kind of scholars, well, then some of our colleagues can even find themselves alienated from us. And what do I mean by this? I mean, we recently have seen a new association, the Philosophy of Higher Education Association, who somehow insists that higher education is not sufficiently recognized or found relevant within philosophy of education. And of course, I mean, that's both a problem in terms of scholarship, but it's also, of course, a problem when it comes to organizing ourselves within our various organizations of philosophy of education. So, I mean, I think we should, and this is just a comment because we had this benefit of time to say that these questions about responsibility, equality, learning, I think we should address them specifically in terms of where we are in the development as human beings. So that is just to well, make a call for us to be more precise, using pupils when it's pupils, using students when it's students, professors when it's professors, primary school teachers when it's, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really, Asgard, when we got together the last time in Argentina and Buenos Aires, it was nice. Good to see you here. I think your comment is so good because you are putting a necessity of what we have in philosophy. When you're talking concerning one thing, we must but clear what this thing in related to other. And I just say I agree with you. I think we really will get more. Our argument, our construction will be more clear when we do what you were doing. Then I just agree with you. You are totally correct in this way, in my opinion. Sometimes we used to put some things together as a strategy to explain some things. Depends on the time we have, depends on the situation. Sometimes it's for a didactic way, but you were right. It's necessary to take care. We must take care, otherwise we can lose the focus and we can be a little bit maybe lost in the way we are defending. And I really agree. And I saw one comment here. I don't know if I can comment. Now I opened the chat. I'm sorry, I'm not working on the, only right now I saw some things here. And some people's Seidstrom, I don't know exactly the name, but a colleague is here. It says, to be specific, Hans Herz, meaning the equality is not a fact, but assumption. Yeah, that's right. And also it's very difficult to define equality, even not only with Hans Herz, or even if you take Brazilian constitution, for example. We have actually a concept. We have an idea, and some different groups, they are giving some kind of interpretation, different interpretation from one thing that could be very clear. But actually, the question is, what is the equality actually? What is equality? This is a philosophical question we have for years and years, and I think this will be good for another situation, for another speaker, only for that. Oh, another one here. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for comments, for everyone. I'm very happy to see people from Sweden, Denmark, and I'm happy to the opportunity to go to the Denmark next INPI. It will be nice.
Another comment from Jeff in the chat room.
Well, just a friendly remark to you, Samuel, that after we had the INPE in Denmark, we should, of course, have the Alpha in Denmark, as we talked about and joked about. So all the Latin Americans should come to Denmark. So, but that's the future.
Could be great. Brazil is open to get this opportunity. Maybe in the future, who knows?
There's Renato.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Samuel. How are you?
It's good to see you.
I was thinking about the pandemic and what you talked about, a big chunk of the Brazilian population not having access to internet. And for example, I see how the Mexican government has been dealing with not the lockdown, because half of our population lives on a daily basis. So if they don't sell whatever they produce, they don't have anything to eat. So the lockdown is of course uneven. But I was thinking, you mentioned Rancière as food for thought on pandemics, and he has this very interesting position on how to deal with on the concept of he takes that from the Greek ochlos, which means like the I don't know the exact translation into English, but like it's like the whole bunch of people that are like the poor masses, let's say, in my rough translation. And he says that we have to think it in a different way. Like we have to think emancipation through a way in not like diminishing the abilities of the individual, even that with those words like the mass and the poor people as a chunk. And he tries to give another perspective on how we can emancipate people. So how, I know that your paper was not about this, but how do you think we could use Rancière and the pandemics with the population, like in Brazil, Mexico, or in many other places, to rethink on how we can educate? Also taking into account what Asger said, because we have to be careful also with the terms. But I don't know if I was clear. No, how do you think that Rancière could help us in that concern from your perspective?
Thank you very much, Renato. Good to see you again. I have two answers for your question. The first could be what I really believe. I think it's not possible to use Rancière's conception in this regard. When we think concerning not only the schoolmasters, but other books, he is thinking concerning a teacher, even if he explains the students will learn by themselves. They learn because the teacher gave a book, and the teacher was with a translator. The translator explained what they had to do at that time. And the question is, do we have in these countries, as Brazil or Mexico, do we have enough people already for work in a different way we are doing in concerning not only the computer access, because we don't have, then it's not possible to think concerning his ideas because we don't have access of the population. And the question is, your question is good, because I think it's not possible in this way. But in the second point of view, I think it's possible when we have a kind of policy. We'll give an opportunity to create leaders, and these leaders could be ready to prepare other leaders in the society, other leaders ready to do others. And of course, this is only what I'm I'm thinking in a perfect world, which we will have human beings with responsibility, human beings who could think in the suffer of other. And this is not the case of what we have in Latin America in general, and we know that. But this is the way I think we must work on. We must try to convince people concerning what each of one could do right now, and not stay waiting for. And in this way, I think Hanser could be a key word in the meaning of you have a teacher who will go there, will present a tool, could be a book, could be a word, could be only a feeling, could be only, a kind of a point of view. And it's difficult to think concerning what could be, but this is what I can think right now. And I think it's not enough and not so deep, but I think I will keep thinking later on. Thank you very much.
There's another question in the chat room, but perhaps we should use this opportunity of a slight lull to recuperate, to replenish our endless, bottomless mugs of coffee or something, and we'll reconvene in just over 20 minutes for the next session. So on the hour, we'll all see each other again. Thanks very much, Samuel, and please join me in thanking Samuel for a very...
Thank you very much. Let me take 1 second, Kai, if you give me permission. We have a calling of our magazine in Brazil. Renato, actually, he is working on this number for 2021, the next year. And we are here. I can use this time for asking for you if you have a contribution for our magazine. It's a good magazine, which Mrs. Linda Stone, for example, is our international board. And I would like to invite all of you. I will put here the link. You can have information concerning our educational magazine we have in Brazil. Okay, thank you very much. I will take let me take here right now, just to give you